Sputnik News reports that over 14 million Americans have already cast their ballots.
Yeah, so speaking of things that could affect the race, also, I don't think this new
Ugh.
news on Hunter Biden is going to affect the race either because people already knew about this. But the bigger story here is how Facebook is censoring uh,
Yeah.
this Hunter Biden story.
Oh,
So
Jesus.
for people who don't know, the New York Post, they published a story after getting a hold of emails that showed Hunter Biden being corrupt. The title of the article is revealed Ukraine exec thanked Hunter Biden for opportunity to meet Veep dad. So pretty much the biggest reveal of the story is that Burisma's number 3 executive, he asked Hunter if he could use his influence on the company's behalf. Now, this is explicit conflict of interest. The U.S. is the most powerful country on the planet, and here is Burisma bribing Joe Biden through his son so that they can excel their business. Now, again, Hunter, who had no experience serving on an energy board prior to this, um, was also dishonorably discharged from the military, and he got caught with drugs multiple times. So this is stuff that the public deserves to know. Uh, if they want to test the validity of this story, then just hire somebody to debunk it. But no, Facebook and Twitter are now censoring this story, not allowing people to share this story. I think it's very dangerous to do
Yeah,
that.
I agree. I agree. I actually think that President Trump or Vice President Pence should start the process to allow extradition for Joe Biden's son to be prosecuted
Ooh,
um,
damn.
by the people down there to handle that. What was the country again?
It was Ukraine.
Yeah, the Ukrainians should be able to extradite Hunter Biden and be prosecuted. I think President Trump should start on that because it shows the blatant corruption where somebody in a position with money and a little bit of power can, get their son in a company where he has no experience. Uh,
What should
that's
they do about Facebook and Twitter?
Well, I think we should also allow other countries to extradite the executives of these social media companies as well. I would allow China to I'm sure they'd love to get a crack at Zuckerberg's neck. So why not? Well, let's open it up to that. I
I
mean,
know.
the CEOs can be replaced, right, Dak? I mean, CEOs are, Dak will tell you, these CEOs, there's not a lot of worth in what they contribute to the
Yeah,
larger
I know.
societal problems.
I know Dak is urging to say something about this. What do you have to say, Dak?
Well, I cannot believe the extent to which the corporate media is blocking for Joe Biden on this issue.
Hmm.
I mean, you cannot go anywhere and read anything about this story without being told 10 times in one paragraph that it has been debunked. I mean, if you go on, Wikipedia is obviously the source that most Americans rely on. The article
It's
that describes
trash.
it is trash, but it's also, we have to look at it because this is what
Yeah.
most people are taking a look at. The article in question is titled Biden Ukraine Conspiracy Theory. That title alone casts it in a negative light. And then the article, it's so incredibly sloppy. President Donald Trump and his allies have alleged that Joe Biden and his son Hunter were engaged in corrupt activities in Ukraine. That is automatically reducing it
These
to
aren't
make
allegations; these have been proven.
Hmm.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
making you think that this is just a figment of Donald Trump's imagination. So if you dislike Donald Trump, and you click on this article, you are immediately going to be persuaded that the whole thing is false. And then in the second paragraph, you find the most technocratic reasoning I've ever seen. It says Vice President Biden did withhold $1 billion in government aid to Ukraine, but for the opposite reason the conspiracy theory asserts. As a matter of American and international policy to induce Ukraine to remove an ineffective prosecutor who was not actively investigating Burisma. Then it goes on to
That's not true.
say, it goes on to say, in a widely circulated 2018 video, a portion of which was included in a Trump campaign ad. Joe Biden is seen taking credit for Shokin's firing, but not for the reason the conspiracy theory and the Trump ad contend. Well, obviously, Joe Biden is not going to say in public, yes, I persuaded Ukraine to fire that prosecutor because I wanted to protect my son's corrupt business dealings. I mean,
also, why are they even dealing with a prosecutor? Like, that's such low-level stuff. It doesn't make sense. Like, who the prosecutor is investigating, what companies in Ukrainian territory, what does that matter to anybody?
Why does it matter that the video clip of Biden talking about this was included in a Trump campaign ad? That is entirely irrelevant to the point. It's like this is just straight up propaganda, and it's not just Wikipedia. Obviously, you go anywhere and you cannot read a single paragraph about this without it being bookended with reminders in case you missed it that the whole thing is false.
The only one talking about this is Donald Trump. And, I'm glad you brought up Wikipedia because, like 40% of it or like a big percent of it is done by like one small group or a small, cabal of people who, monitor and run guard for themselves. Yeah, Wikipedia is not the most reliable source. I think that's why it's not allowed to be credited as a
corrupted
source in most universities.
It has Hitler's article is more neutral than this one. It really is.
There's a lot of pro-imperialist, pro-Western imperialist people that run Wikipedia and edit it. You're not even allowed to cite the Gray Zone or Mint Press News. The Gray Zone has never had to redact any single article ever. And then they say they don't give a reason why, they just other than to say that it's controversial.
Well, the Intercept got tangled up in that mess where they oust one of their people to the CIA or something.
No,
or like one of their informants.
And anybody
on false charges.
Anybody who wants to learn about the iniquities of Wikipedia, Helen Bajnitsky wrote a great article called Wikipedia J'accuse, and she also did an interview with Chris Hedges where she talks about this issue.
And don't you guys see a double standard here with how the New York Times published Trump's taxes? Like, why wasn't social media censoring that and giving the reason, it's because it's going to interfere with the elections? Because I'm sure that's the reason they're trying to give here.
So, Franco, what would you do about it? Because you haven't told us your thoughts on it.
I think that, I said that I think if they want to debunk it, or if they don't want people to know if they don't want people to be negatively affected on their perspective of Biden because of this story, then they should hire somebody to debunk this story and let people make up their minds that way.
Okay, so are you not in line with AOC then? You're not for like heavy regulations of what can be or can't be said?
No, absolutely.
Okay, so you want it to be more free. So you want these companies, right, to listen to the people, essentially.
Yeah, I think that it should be a public utility.
Well, they're not going to listen to you unless you put up money. So how much money does the people put up to buy out Facebook?
We have to put in money so that they can have it.
They're a private company. We're talking about property rights at this point.
Right, but the government can take that away from Facebook and Twitter.
You want the government involved. You want the politicians involved.
Did I misunderstand someone earlier? Did AOC come out and say that she supports Twitter and Facebook halting
Yeah, she supports censorship.
Yep.
For this specific issue, did she come out and say that she wants Twitter and Facebook to halt traffic about this story?
Oh, yeah, I don't know about this story, but she supports censorship on social media.
What trust can we have, guys? Like, what trust can we have in that if we allow the government to come in and progressives get their way?
Well, take a look at this, yeah? Like, when the CIA wants to, control other governments, what do? They create chaos, and then they install weak leaders. You know what I mean? Isn't that precisely what's going on right here? Look at this weird sense of helplessness. And if we take a look at this Burisma thing and this Ukraine thing, how usually scandals of this nature have an effect. Look at all these scandals that have no effect. It's so weird. It's just one another, and it's a parade of ridiculousness.
Well, Ed, welcome to my reality where I actually understand that in order for the United States to implement regime change around the world, it first had to try it out in its backyard. So, the fact that people still think that it's not happening here, like Vosh and all them, like, America's not fascist. Well, yeah, there's some technicalities that you have to work through to be categorized as fascist. Yeah, the most intellectual people across universities around this planet are trying to debate and formulate the definition of fascism. So nobody really knows what it is. But we're going to go ahead and say that definitely the U.S. isn't, even though you ask anybody who's been invaded by America or anybody around the world with our interventionism, they'll tell you right away, no hesitation. Yeah, you guys are a bit fascistic.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. And also they're being fascistic here by censoring information. And also like why aren't they doing the same thing about how the stories about Assad gassing his own people, despite scientific evidence suggesting that it was staged and that it was not the government that gassed their own people, and also the Russiagate stories, which never like presented any evidence other than said official, so anonymous official said that this happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's pathetic. I mean, it's completely inconsistent, but also why do these I'm struggling to understand, how is Joe Biden a victim in all of this? Joe Biden is one of the most powerful people in the world. Like, I think it should be, maybe it would make more sense if, like, I'm not allowed to spread malicious propaganda about Ed because Ed does not have this massive political party behind him. Right. He doesn't have this massive political party behind him to defend his reputation. Joe Biden is not a victim, no matter what is being said about him.
Yeah, and the people deserve to know the truth, just like they deserve to know the truth about Hillary Clinton and her corruption and the role she played with overthrowing governments and also colluding with the Democratic Party to rig the election against Bernie Sanders. But this is something the public deserves to know.
But there's also a way to look at it, which is that I think in a way the right to the truth in this instance is almost secondary to the right to lie. I mean, I think it was Gore Vidal who said in that speech back in 1998 about the history of the national security state, I believe it was. He said that the First Amendment is there not to let us tell the truth. The First Amendment is there to protect people telling lies. And even if this information about Joe Biden were to be false, the idea that it cannot be proliferated on Twitter, that in itself is offensive.
Yeah. Well, Ed and Israel, what do you think is the solution to all this?
I think it's a multifaceted thing, but you just have to understand, like, you have to make compromises in life. So for me, I value more liberty, more libertarian things. I'd rather not have the government try to figure out, what these companies can and can't allow on their platforms. I do think that we should definitely consider making them utilities, but that's going to come with a cost. And I don't know if I'm ready to make that, decision. But yeah, less government, more freedom.
Do you think that Facebook and Twitter can censor things without the government telling them? Like if they wanted?
Honestly, I think that what happened is so all right, let's think of this, right? And I'm interested to get everybody's thoughts here, and I think this is a good topic. So for example, everything seemed kind of calm until Gamergate. Once Gamergate got kicking off, or even what was it, like that YouTube apocalypse? That's a better example. YouTube apocalypse, right? A bunch of soccer mom Democrat liberals who lean to believe into Bernie Sanders' mythology. These kind of progressive people. They're very sensitive. So it's almost a question of like, okay, who do we blame here? Do we blame the consumers who are naive and don't understand that YouTube is a platform, not a publisher, and this cultural societal pressure by like a group of these people who are Karens, who are moms, who are Franco's friends, or who are my friends, or who are my neighbors. They're kind of unified mental thinking that YouTube, they shouldn't run mac and cheese ads on a Nazi like propaganda channel, right? But that's the deal, right? The deal is we're not sponsoring a Nazi. We're not sponsoring a communist. We're not sponsoring a flat earther. But society thought that way. So society put pressure on the companies. That caught the attention of the legislators because certain, go-getters are going to go talk to their legislators and are always bothering them at the offices and all that, open hours and whatnot. And so what happens is you start getting this big old thing stirring up like a snowball, and then the government gets involved. And when the government gets involved, it's naive because it's taking its information from naive people. The market will operate and course correct. It will do that. It didn't even need anything. Everybody was happy. Nazis get their mac and cheese YouTube money, and communists get their YouTube, rice-a-roni money. Everybody's happy. Everybody was happy until all of that popped off. Apocalypse. So, you ask me that. I ask you, what was wrong with before? Why did all these people become so sensitive when a mac and cheese ad ran on a YouTube propaganda channel? And we had to get our Congress people involved to where it's now all complicated.
I don't remember if there was that much censorship before, other than Facebook censoring like nudity and like violent videos.
Yeah, it was all about titties and violence.
Of which, like, I think that you can just put like a warning for people and restrict people who are like not of age.
And trust me, the companies and the
like
CEOs would be on your side.
I think it's just like where it can lead to, in which like the CEOs became so powerful that they now have a lot of political interests and influence.
Yeah, but then the progressives make it worse. They stroke it. They say, oh, you know what? It should also be the Civil War statues. Wait, are you for like the forefathers? Did you know what they did and stuff? Sorry.
Ed, I saw you writing some stuff down. What do you think?
All right, so you're asking about the solution to the problem. Well, Israel's back, yeah?
Yeah.
I could clear him
Yeah,
up. Go ahead.
I'll be right back.
Okay.
All right.
So you asked me how I think that we can bring about change in this situation. And the thing is that really a lot of people say, oh, we can't change this, or things are too far all the time, yeah? First of all, and one of the really biggest problems is that it leaves a lot of people to inaction. So they never learn how to do the actions that it will take to win, because they're always waiting for things to develop. No, you have to learn by doing. Change is easy. Actually, I come from the music industry, and honestly, yeah, look at the Macarena. Look at like rap. They said rap was going to be a fad. Look at all, like, I've seen music groups blow up like overnight, yeah? Honestly, all we have to do is capture the imagination, and the sell is not that hard. Look at punk rock, or look at like 80s hair metal. You have dudes wearing lipstick, you know what I mean? Like, wearing like spandex and stuff, and they selling millions and millions and millions of records. You know what I mean? We don't have as hard of a sell. We're asking people to what? Everybody already knows the corporates are taking an unfair amount. Yeah? They're just convincing us to go against each other. Screw all that other stuff. Let's focus on one thing. The corporations have an unfair influence on our democracy. Mm-hmm. We need to fix that. Once we fix that, a lot of other things get fixed. Straight up. Yeah?
Jack, you want to give the last word here on how you would fix this problem?
What, the problem of the
censorship by social media?
I mean, I don't understand why they need to be censoring anything that's not illegal content. Yeah. I mean, I remember back in the old days when the internet was like the wild, wild west, and somehow we survived. I mean, I don't think that the elections of 2004 and 2008 were hijacked by malicious actors. I mean, it's just, this is all just an encroachment upon the First Amendment. I mean, there's no reason why social media companies should be attempting to remove any content as long as it's not illegal. And if it is illegal, like if it's child pornography or something like that, then you alert the FBI. Mm-hmm. I mean, this idea that misinformation about a candidate, politics is about nothing if not misinformation about candidates. Politics is not based on the truth. I mean, it's this hostility to lying that is the problem. This idea that lying ought to be criminalized, as if every single thing we
everybody would be a criminal.
Right. It's like, it's the idea that that no matter where we are, we're speaking in a court of law in an official setting, and we can be charged with perjury or something like that. That is a grotesque idea of what society should be. There's an interesting video on YouTube. I can't remember where it is or what it's titled, but there's a college professor who makes the argument that slander should not be illegal. And he talks about, he says, let's say I write a review of the film Planet of the Apes, and I say this movie was terrible because there were no apes in it. Obviously, that would be a lie, but should he be prosecuted for that? Like, is that something that he should, or that should, it sounds silly, but I think he made a very good point, which is that why is that kind of language, why should it be criminalized? It's way over the top to treat it as a crime.
Yeah, if you want to prove something is a lie, then debunk it with actual facts and evidence.
Right. That's another thing. We're allowing the government to call the shots.
If you said, if you said that someone showed the movie, right, and they said there's no apes in it, yeah, and then people decided not to see the movie, and you didn't make money off of it despite your investment, yeah, then you can, the person might say that they have some damages.
They would, but at the same time, I'm allowed to say that the film was terrible and boring, and people could say it wasn't boring at all, it was exciting. I mean, I understand that you can't objectively quantify that, but at the same time, the idea that the language should be criminalized, it just seems like it's just very far over the top. I mean, where do you draw the line with something like that, to the point where we're getting to where all speech is policed?
I think the reason why they're censoring things is because they're trying to remove accountability. You know what I mean? Certain people need to be protected. You know what I mean? And they're too good to face any consequences. Mm-hmm. So we just need to clear that whole, above the law mentality out of here, and get to it.
I think that they're trying to protect themselves in certain cases. Like, I do think that the reason Alex Jones got kicked off of social media was because these tech companies were afraid of being roped in as co-defendants in the lawsuits he was facing from the parents of the children at Sandy Hook. And I do think in that case, the parents probably had a legal case to sue him. I think that they were right. But the thing is, if I'm correct, then I think Twitter and Facebook and YouTube should have just come out and said, this is why we're severing ties with Alex Jones, as opposed to saying nothing, which opens the door to all kinds of fear-mongering and conspiracy theories.
Right. Yeah.
Hey guys, I gotta head out, but I'll try to call back in if I can. If not, I appreciate you guys having me on.
I appreciate you.
Right,
I appreciate you giving your perspective, Israel. It's great. It's always great to have you.
I really didn't want to finish that thought, but we'll have to save it for next time.
We have your show to continue that conversation.
Yeah, That's you guys are invited too. Ed and Dak, you guys can come on board. We'll keep it zen. We'll keep it very mild.
Cool.
Hopefully tomorrow my illness will be over and I'll be able to drink alcohol, because I haven't been able to do that in days.
Oh yeah, I need some right now, believe me. All right, later guys. Bye.
Bye.
Later.
All right.